Welcome to TaNaCh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with a special edition with Gabriel Aryeh Sanders. I'm going to get it right this time. The Jewish future: survive, thrive, or nosedive. Now, we have several other possibilities by the time this thing airs for the titles shifting, but right now we're going to start with that one. And you have picked a really, really interesting topic that needs to be discussed, and I'm actually glad you're doing this because it's, at least for me, it may not be, a curiosity for like the multitude, but I know it is for me and a very large handful of others. So regarding the Jewish future, it always amazed me how regarding in TaNaCh, they went from 70 to, over 2 million people, and I know the Midrash teaches different things about how they were having quadruplets and, sextuplets and things like that, the Hashem has that ability to really make that happen. And so, but now we're at a place where it does seem like it could be that the Jewish culture is slowing down. I'm not really sure. Are they picking up? I don't even know what the Jewish demographics are for their, I guess you could say, the fate of the Jewish people on a human level. So that's kind of spirit level as well, of course. But
it's a fascinating subject, and I appreciate you, William, first of all, just for who you are and what you do for so many through this amazing channel with the funky name of TaNaCh Talk.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been a fan and sort of a contributing content provider with you for a number of years now. And
if
we
you
haven't
guys,
had the pleasure of shaking it.
I'm pausing you right there. Great content provider right here. And if you're tuning in for the first time, you don't know Gabriel. He's an amazing Hebrew teacher. We've got tons of classes on my channel. He's got tons of his own stuff that you guys can check out. Amazing. We're still moving forward with the Hebrew classes. We're probably going to average once a month or something like that. But keep your eyes open for special content like this also, because this could be just a segue for you and I to start. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe this is like a new series of just like special content, and maybe we'll have a folder for that. So anyway, go ahead.
That's great. No, that's really super. And the fact that I've migrated like Tovia Singer did some years ago. Now I live in Jerusalem. In fact, he's a near neighbor, and we live in the same. He's probably 6-minute walk from my door.
That's awesome.
In fact, it's very interesting to walk down Ben Yehuda Street, which is the popular pedestrian street now, and especially on when Shabbat lets out, Motzei Shabbat, but to bump into him down there doing the same thing that I'm doing, which was cruising for missionaries to see whose time we can occupy to keep them busy with us instead of somebody else.
I expect to see you two in the same video soon.
Okay. Well, that would be a very interesting conversation
with you two on the street doing your own video, and I want to watch that. I want to watch that from my easy chair at home while you guys do all the work and just watch y'all do y'all's thing.
Well, I can only say positive things about his focused contribution to so many tens of thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people now who've been influenced by I think at least close to 1,000 videos, if not more, that he's contributed. And a lot of that, of course, has come through you. And it's just really, in my view, some pretty conspicuous divine fingerprints on the operation that made all that happen, because it's just had such a broad, sweeping impact for so many people's lives. So I'm grateful to be part of the TaNaCh Talk family of contributors. It's a very important channel that occupies a strategic place in the crossroads for many people's lives, where they intercept you at a point where they got a lot of questions, and here they're going to find a lot of answers. And that's a great thing for which we're grateful. So I raised with you this subject of the Jewish future for a couple of, I think, compelling reasons. One is that I've migrated from the land of America. I call it Bidenstan these days, but I've come here as I'm an Israeli. I'm a citizen. Right. It's amazing. I've got the identity card. It's like, wow, you have to wait a while here to get a passport. But I migrated here in late March before Pesach, and am holed up in a little, at the moment, a studio apartment in the neighborhood of Nachlaot. If anybody's been to Jerusalem and you know Machane Yehuda, the famous market where people buy their fish and their meat and their vegetables and their fruit and whatever, sort of across the street from that, Agrippus. And the neighborhood that I'm in was one of the early ones that was built outside the walled city. So some of the buildings here are 125, even 150 years old. And a lot of very significant personalities like Harav Aryeh Levine lived in this neighborhood. And on my street over here, I'm kind of at the corner of Beersheba and Tekoa, two biblical cities, the street names here. And on my street of Beersheba, there are 5 places I can go daven, I can go pray. You know, and it's amazing. There's a beautiful Karlebach minyan on Shabbat morning, 30 seconds from my door, meets in a bomb shelter.
Wow.
But it looks like a beautiful shul.
Doesn't get much safer than that.
Doesn't get much safer than that. So
yeah.
the thrill, this has been a decades-long dream, even before I became a convert to Judaism. My heart was definitely here in the land of Israel. I remember my very first time touching down here in 1977, and this odd, curious sense of being home, but it's not my home. Well, those were early inklings of a later process that would happen. So this land transforms people. And so it can be utilized to make such a difference in people's lives. I'm going to come back to that thought, but I want you to hold on to that thought about how the land of Israel can really have an enduring shift. I would call it a tectonic shift at the deep structure of a person's life. It certainly did with me. So I raised with you one of my concerns, though, in being here, and that's like looking from the, if you will, the mountaintop of, I live in the Judean hills, really. Jerusalem is nestled, Harim Savivla, mountains are surrounding it, says the book of Psalms. And I look toward the west and I think of the Jews, particularly in America, other places too, but particularly in America. And I have this compelling, disturbing thought about the future of Judaism. As you mentioned, and as we started, is the future of Judaism to survive, just to survive, like so many generations past? Will it thrive, or will it nosedive? And I've identified, at least for my own paradigm of thought, using the word ale, not ALE, that's something to drink, but AIL, like what ails you, right? What's bothering you? The word ale, those 3 letters stand for, I think, 3 of the big observable, measurable issues that Judaism faces today. Jews and Judaism in America and the West face today. The A stands for assimilation. The I stands for intermarriage. And the L stands for low birth rate. I know that's 2 words, but it's
no, that works very well. That works very well.
You'll remember that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I like that.
Because that's one of the things that's ailing us. But underneath that, see, that's an observable, I would call those symptoms of the problem, but not the problem. In fact, you remind me of an incident that happened in my life 15, 18 years ago. I was out in Los Angeles speaking for an organization, and I was asked to stop into one of the local Jewish high schools. So I was with, I think they were 11th and 12th graders. They seemed to be pretty mature students. And I threw a question out to them, and I said, could you tell me, what do you think are the real serious issues facing Jews and Judaism today? And they mentioned some of the things that we just said. Well, assimilation's an issue, intermarriage is an issue. So I said, yeah, but what's underneath all that? Can we reduce it down to one primary propagator of those, then what we call symptoms? They didn't know what to do with that. And I quoted from the Navi, from the prophet, who said, Nidmu ami bibli da'at, v'hadat ma'asta. What does that mean? My people are disappearing, vanishing,
for lack of knowledge,
for lack of something called da'at. You know from your days back in the same kind of place I used to hang out in, the church. My people perish for lack of knowledge. And then he goes on to say, and this knowledge, it uses now the singular, nidmu ami, that uses the plural. Nidmu means they are perishing, vanishing. Ami, my people. Mi bli da'at, without knowledge. Then goes on to make it personal, using the second person singular to say, hey, a little Hebrew lesson here.
Nice. I like it.
To say, you have despised this knowledge. Well, the knowledge of what? Now, the concept of knowing, da'at or leda'at, is a word yodea, comes up several times throughout the Jewish Bible. In fact, more than the word for emunah, more than the word for believing, we have this imperative, du ki hu Elokim, it says in Psalm 100, know that God is the Lord, that the Lord is God. And so the primary the primary root cause contributing to these symptoms of assimilation and intermarriage and low birth rate are from this paucity, this lack of the knowledge of who the Jewish people are, where they come from.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think it was Abraham Heschel, Abram Joshua Heschel, or Avram Yoshua Heschel, a great theologian, Jewish theologian, who said, the Jewish people is a messenger which has forgotten the message. Scary, huh?
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah.
The Jewish people is a messenger which has forgotten the message. I've said for years, especially in lectures I've done around the world, that rather than being a light to the nations, the more modern version of Jews and Judaism want to be liked by the nations, or even more, to be like the nations. The Benjamin Netanyahu, for whom I have a lot of respect, even though he's under tremendous fire here in Israel today by the leftists, he wrote a book called A Nation Among the Nations. And yet in the prophecy of Bilam, it said that the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, would stand alone. Remember, the cheese stands alone, the cheese stands alone. I get the childhood song we sing. Well, the Jewish people is intended to stand alone in the sense of not being mixed in amongst the nations in order to be this beacon, this light to the nations when it comes to especially certain moral structures. And so that's being deceitfully, desperately diluted and diluted and diluted by the common culture today. Because do you remember, William, the book you might have read as a kid? I think it was about a duck going around saying, "Are you my mother?
Sounds
Are
familiar.
you my mother? Are you my?"
I don't
Right,
remember
so
what
you
it's
my
called,
mother.
though. I don't remember what it's called,
So
though.
I see the Jewish people today kind of doing that. Like, are you my identity? Are you my identity? And so being here in Israel now and looking to the West, I see some real causes of concerns for the up and coming generation. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But what I'd like to do, with your permission, is I'd like to take our viewers to, I think, one of the most amazing websites, and it's really easy not to forget it. Why? Because it's called simpletoremember.com.
Yep.
So I'm going to take you to simpletoremember.com. There's a lot there.
Right.
But we're going to focus for a little bit on the question of saying it's a Jewish people. Will your grandchildren be Jewish? Because when people ask me the question, what is a Jew? I have a rather simple answer. A lot of people complicate it. I just say it's somebody whose grandchildren will continue to bear the torch of Jewish identity. So let's take a look at that for a minute.
Okay.
So here we are at the website known as simpletoremember.com. Here's the question, and I'm going to take you through a few, they call it an infographic. I think it's one of the most disturbing things that I've seen, because it's based on a Pew report, PEW, Pew Research, and also the work of someone named Dick Horowitz, a Jewish businessman in Los Angeles that also financed part of the study that's behind this. So we are really facing in the West something that in Hebrew we call a kiyum chiyuni, an existential threat. And the chances that American Jews will have Jewish grandchildren are becoming extremely, extremely remote. Why? Well, there's intermarriage rate, but look at the numbers here. 71% of non-Orthodox marriages from 2005 to 2013, now we're 10 years out from that, were intermarriages. That number is actually up now. There's been an increase also in Jews that don't marry at all, or marry but choose not to have children. That, by the way, is a piece of the common culture puzzle. People across the board are in that category, choosing not to marry or marrying but not having any children. So American assimilation manifests in such a way that Judaism is becoming, for most Jews, more of a cultural thing. It's lights at Hanukkah, and maybe I have a Hanukkah bush because I'm intermarried and my wife wants the tree. Maybe it's just gelt and chocolate for the children, gelt meaning money for the children, not guilt. We have Jewish guilt, but we're talking about the Jewish guilt. We have Jewish gelt, money for the kids. Or Passover Seder, we get together at Bubby's house, and Zadie, the grandfather, tells the story, but we're not really so connected to that because we really would rather go shopping,
Right.
Look at this. 20% of American Jews describe themselves as having no religion at all. Now, that number in the common culture is up over 30%. The Pew Research study talked about so they've said what's the fastest growing religion in the West today?
Christianity.
No religion.
Oh.
Right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. No, I wish it were Noahidism,
Right.
but it's not. So there's a lot of thought being given to this issue of what kind of creativity can be employed to keep American Jews from falling off this demographic cliff. Because now we get into some hard numbers that outside the Orthodox world, outside like the Hasidic world, the Yeshivish world, even the modern Orthodox world. And how do you define the modern Orthodox? Those would be congregations like Young Israel, for example. And there are quite a number of Young Israel congregations around the country in major cities, particularly. So what we found, and by the way, years ago, I worked with Rabbi Ben Zion Kravitz from Jews for Judaism. I did about a 9-month stint right after coming out of the mikveh as a new, freshly born Jew. And I worked with him as an educational consultant in Los Angeles. And I actually did a proposal for the Los Angeles, what they call it, the Jewish Family Foundation. And we called it Two Roads, One Path, to try to address the issues that intermarried couples were having, because it was a really difficult thing. They thought their goal was to have the best of both worlds, but when it came to children, they weren't giving the best of either world. I'm going to have to use this word. It was a bastardized form of both. It just didn't work. So while they used the cultural appurtenances, the trimmings and the trappings, it didn't transmit with any kind of substance or significance for their children. So the analysis of the raw data from the Pew report found, look at these on the left side here. Intermarried families are less likely to provide any formal or even informal Jewish education to their children. They rarely join a synagogue. They don't have religious practices. They don't contribute to charities. They'll do the baseball team or the hospital, but not some Jewish institution.
Sure.
They don't identify as strongly with Israel, and they don't really befriend other Jews. Now let's pause and go over to the right here and look carefully but quickly at this chart. So on the far left-hand margin over here, we have, and you can see my mouse here, can you?
Yep.
I want to make sure you're still here.
Yep.
So we'll have first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation. So these vertical columns have to do with Jews that pretty much identify as secular. Then we have Reform. I spent a couple of years in the Reform movement, so I know it fairly well. Then what we call conservative Jews. Their rabbis tend to differ in terms of theology, but the people in the pew tend to be pretty much the same composition. Then we have centrist Orthodox, what we call modern Orthodox. And then we have Hasidic and Yeshivish. So this one individual here that you see up in the right-hand corner equals 10 people, a minyan.
Right.
So what happens here? We have a first generation. Okay, so we're starting off with the same basic number. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right. So that actually equals 100. You see the number right here, 100. Yep. So we start off looking at the bottom here of this first row, 100 Jews. What happens in the second generation? Well, amongst the secular, it drops to 31. In the third generation to 11. In the fourth generation to 4. Now, is that what you would call a positive replacement rate? No.
That's horrible.
Look at the Reform. We go from 100 to 51 to 20.
Yeah.
Actually, what's the number there? 26?
26.
And 13. I'm not wearing my glasses, so.
I'll be
In the conservatives, we start with 100. We drop to 81, to 65, to 52. So we see that within the conservative movement, there's definitely a slowing
Yeah.
of the parachute. It's not the brick drop that you see from over here with the secular,
Yeah.
but it's still a
It's still a
declining figure.
Yeah, it's still a decline, no matter what how you look at it.
And when we come to the modern Orthodox or the centrist Orthodox, like the Young Israel, we go from 100 to 150 to 250 to 337. And in the Hasidic Yeshivish community,
Yeah.
100 to 327 to 1,039 to 3,000, almost 3,400 by the fourth generation.
Yeah.
So I know when I look at our own family, the family that I'm married into, it's been just an amazing positive growth. I won't mention the numbers because, as King David was told not to number, we tend not to do that. But I can tell you that it's definitely been positive growth. And when I go visit friends of mine here in the Hasidic community, I'm good friends with the people in the Bostoner. They don't live in Boston, but the original Bostoner Rebbe. So he has some great grandkids here. Sometimes I go to them for Shabbat, and they're nurturing a bunch of kids.
Right.
So it's not just replacing the generation of the Holocaust, it's contributing further. And so what does the future of Judaism look like on one hand? Well, on one hand, the future of Judaism looks like it belongs over here. But this is a large number of people because the general population, it's estimated some 6 or 7 million Jews in America today. Interestingly, there's about 7 million Jews in Israel today. This is the first time in 2,000 years, William, that the number of Jews in the land have been greater than the Jews outside the land.
Wow.
Phenomenal, phenomenal thing. Okay. But we face some very challenging things here because Israel, you could really divide it into the Israeli Jews, you could divide into 3 categories. And this comes from a very good friend of mine who is a PhD in risk management, brilliant fellow who's one of the early participants with Rabbi Noach Weinberg and Aish Torah decades ago. Wonderful, brilliant, critical, analytical thinker. And we talk quite a bit. We're very close friends. My buddy Mordechai. And he did this breakdown. He says, if you look at Israeli society today, you'll find that about 1/3 are what we call secularists. 1/3 are we call maybe center-right or traditionalists. And another third are what we'd call really observant. Okay, so the ones in the middle, that middle group, they might fast on Yom Kippur and have a Passover Seder, but they might not necessarily keep the Shabbat. Might have some things they don't do. Maybe they won't smoke on Shabbat. A lot of Israelis smoke, which is distressing to me. But the other group, to the right, is the one that's really growing quickly. And that's very disturbing, by the way, to the ones on the left, the far left, because they want to keep their, let's call it the People's Republic of Tel Aviv. All right. That's a whole other discussion that I want to have right now. But now when we look at the other factors, so we talked about the reduction in replacement. We look at the intermarriage rate here. I'll move it up to the middle here. The intermarriage rate of 85, 79, 24, and then the centrist 2 is very hardly at all. It just really it's not measurable in the Hasidic and Yeshivish communities.
Now, just
and then the average
just for clarification, these are official stats. This is not a speculatory number base. This is actual
this is from
stats.
the Pew Research.
This is actual
Pew
statistics.
Research. Yeah, this is really disturbing figures. And when you look at it in black and white or a little shading here on the screen, it's like most of us don't know this. This is new information to most people,
right?
Though it's been hanging out on simpletoremember.com for quite some time. I've cited this study a number of times in public lectures that I've done because I think people need to be aware of this, that there's what we're looking at, I would call it, William, a cultural holocaust.
Absolutely.
For a significant segment of the Western Jewry.
Right.
Because what Hitler's ovens, Yamach Shmo, may his name be erased, what Hitler's ovens couldn't do, the melting pot of America is doing a good job. Let's stop and tell a very famous story. It might be one of Aesop's fables. I can't remember.
Okay.
Do you remember the story about
the
argument?
Let's get you full screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me stop this for now, and I'll come back to it.
Very good. Okay.
Do you remember the story, fable, I guess, about the argument between the sun and the wind? Does that ring a bell?
It does not.
Okay. I'll tell it to you quickly.
Okay.
once there was an argument between the sun and the wind about which one of them was stronger. So the sun said he is, and the wind said no, he is. And so the sun says to the wind, see that guy walking down there on the surface of the earth? Blow his coat off. So the wind shrieks and howls and wails, brings gale force winds against the guy. What does he do with his coat? Holds onto it very tenaciously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the wind exhausts itself in this hurricane effort to blow the coat off the guy. So then the sun says, take a break, wind. Step aside.
Hold my beer.
And you'll remember this. You'll remember this from the Itsy Bitsy Spider, right? Out came the sun
Right.
and dried up all the rain. So the sun beats down on the guy and he just takes his coat off. So how does this connect to Jews and Judaism today? For much of Jewish history, there's been a howling wind of opposition against them. And then something switched, starting, by the way, in 1840s and continuing to today. Because in the 1840s in Germany, the Jews said, we're going to join and look like we're going to be a Jew at home and a man in the street, like everybody else. This was after the French Revolution of 1796, et cetera, 92, 96, I forget. And what happened was they started meeting on Sundays, not on the Sabbath. They had organs for their services. They published the TaNaCh, the Jewish Bible, in German, not in Hebrew. They stopped reading Hebrew. They had choirs. It was very much like the High Lutheran Church. That's what they modeled it after. And what happened? They became like everybody else. They found their way, integrated their way into common society, bankers, educators, business people. And in less than 100 years, who arose to say to the German people who were devastated by World War I, who between World War I and II arose with his brown shirt goons and said, hey, the Jews have taken over all of our institutions. They look like us, but they're not us. That was Hitler, Schmo.
Yeah.
So this was a case where the Jews had enjoyed a period of being in the sunlight of public acceptance, but something came along to change that equation, and the winds began to howl again, and Jews in huge numbers, the third of European Jewry, maybe half of Polish Jewry, perished. So are we set up? What are we looking at today? We're looking at a very similar kind of situation where Jews are looking, as I said earlier, to be more like the world, liked by the world, than a light to the nations. And it's a serious issue that I think anybody who cares about the role of Jews in the world wants to be.
You know what I think this video would be a really great tool to give. And this is not something I'm editing out. I'm leaving this in. This is something that a good video information would be good to give to any Jewish family, regardless of the sect, whether they're Reform, Conservative.
Yes, that's true.
Because if they really cared about their children and about their Judaism and about them carrying on a religious role, and they could see the actual past input and the past effect it's had on past families using hard numbers, that would drive them to say, you know what, maybe reform is not a good idea. Maybe conservative is a better idea. Maybe conservative is not good enough. Maybe we need to do Orthodox for the sake of saving our families. You know what I mean? For me, as a dad, that would be very, very.
Well, I think you're 100% right, and we're going to go back to finish the infographic in a moment. But
Okay.
I think you brought up an excellent point that really has I've thought of the Jews throughout the world as like the bees that pollinate the flowers, and without the bees, and we're facing that in different parts of the world today, where
Sure.
the bee population seems to be catastrophically disappearing. So while the Jews in Israel seem to be on the ascent, the Jews outside of Israel seem to be on the descent, and that's a dangerous thing, because if we go back to the Torah, if we go back to the source code of the Jewish people, we find that Hashem made a promise that there would always be a Torah and there would always be people that followed it. But he also said that the Jews would be few in number. That's one of 7 very significant prophecies. that we've talked about before. And there's I think it's here, yeah, it's here on simple-to-remember.com, that you'll find a fascinating video called The Mystery of the Jews. I think it's about 20 minutes long. Well worth seeing. By the way, just incidentally, parenthetically, there's a lot of very rich content from some of the finest speakers, Jewish contributors in the world. Here, some audio, some are articles, some is video by a number of people that I know, as Rabbi Rieti, Yonatan Rieti, who was son of a famous British actor who became an observant Jew at about 14, 15. He has an amazing story about his life. Mordechai Becher and many others that are here. Some of Rabbi Singer's early tapes are featured here. There's a lot here to go through if you're interested in studying anything about Jews, Judaism, and enriching your own soul for things that you can harvest for your own benefit. So with your permission, I just want to finish out this the content that's here.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
You've got it. So we've talked about, just going back really quickly, we've talked about what the numbers look like going 4 generations from the present to the great-grandchildren, really. That's what we're looking at. We looked at the intermarriage rate. Look down here at the very bottom, right above this pink kind of flesh-colored band, the average number of children per woman, 1.45, 1.73, 1.82. These are under replacement rate. What is the replacement rate? 2.1. So this is definitely between the power, the negative power of the intermarriage to get combined with the poor replacement rate, the lack of replacement rate. That's a catastrophic figure. Those are catastrophic figures. So in the modern Orthodox world or centrist, it's almost 3. And in the Hasidic yeshivish world, it's about 6.5. And I know people with kids that, one family has 13 kids and then 12, 10, whatever. It's amazing. I don't know how they do it, how they live, but it's a miracle. So demographic trends are indicating that significantly fewer, I don't know why people, I'm an English teacher, so by trade and a linguist, and I get so bugged by how people confuse less and fewer, but I'm getting off. Significantly fewer Northern Orthodox Jews are getting married or having children. And again, that matches the popular culture as well. So how does it work out? Percentage of non-Orthodox Jews who are married? Well, you can look at the figures right here for yourself. Over here on the left, males and females. Over here, 40 to 44 on the right, males to females. It's a disturbing set of figures. The average fertility rate, disturbing set of figures. Again, you can go back to this page on simple-to-remember.com/grandchildren and dig this out. So what's the answer? Remember, I spoke to those high school students in Los Angeles, and I said to them, these things you've listed that are threats to Jews and Judaism today are only symptoms of the real problem. What's the root problem? The root problem is ignorance. We don't know who we are. So what's the answer? Nidmu ami bibli da'at. My people are perishing for lack of knowledge. The answer is knowledge. So Jewish day schools, campus outreach programs, having the Birthright Israel experience. Look at what happens with Birthright. 46. Now, Birthright is a program that's financed by mostly by someone named Steinhardt in New York. Very, very wealthy guy, and he's pumped a lot of his money into Birthright. He gives 10-day tours, and there's some other longer tours for Jewish kids, even ones that come from intermarried relationships. And so 46% say they're more likely to feel connected to Israel. 51 say they're more likely than non-participants to be married to a Jew. 35% are likely to view raising their children as Jews, and that's very important. So we see then that education, Jewish education, in other words, knowledge, imparting this knowledge through various channels, the internet, social media, Jewish summer camps. You can see some of the prominent Jewish sites that are here that have been very helpful. There's so many resources available today. I'm going to come back to the main screen here.
Okay.
Let me see, was there something else I wanted to show? Yeah, a couple other things I want to show you, but I'll come back to things here. So 5 weeks ago, I get a phone call from a buddy of mine in New York, far Rockaway, where I'm from. And he says, we have a project that we'd like you to consider consulting on. Okay, what is it? It's called thrive, which is interesting because that's the middle word that we talked about with,
Right.
with the Jewish future.
Yep.
Survive, thrive, or nosedive, right?
Yep.
And the figures that I just gave you showed you that a significant portion of American Jews are in nosedive mode. So in the average, I guess is the way to say it, we're looking at some survival, but I want to see the Jewish people thrive because the world needs the light and the benefit. I mean, I don't have to go down any kind of a list right now to tell everyone who's watching that the West is in serious trouble and America is having an identity crisis that we could never imagine. I'm a child of the 60s. I remember the crazy stuff that we did. And, I remember the hippy dippy weatherman, George Carlin, crazy stuff that we did. Laugh in. That's so tame compared to the literal evisceration of children's bodies that's going on today in the name of remember Frank Sinatra's song, I gotta be me.
Mm-hmm.
And yet so distorted and so why? Because we've lost our moral compass. I think I might have mentioned on the program once, William, that if we take the word for north in Hebrew, Safon, right? Passover, we have toward the end of the Passover Seder, we have the word safun, which means something that's hidden. Okay. And the Hebrew word for conscience is matzpun. And the word for compass is matzpen. So these four Hebrew words all come from a common root.
I just thought of something to add to this. So for Christians who may be watching this or whatever, in the King James, one thing that helped me remember that north was Zaphon would be in, I think it was with the 10 plagues, or not 10 plagues, but whenever the Israelites left Israel and they went north to Baal Zaphon, which was the god of the north, right? So
very good, Baal
You're
Zaphon.
welcome.
Very good, excellent,
Okay.
excellent,
All right.
excellent. So I've seen it in films, and we've all learned this when we were a kid. We learned for the Northern Star. We took it as a reference point, the Northern Star. We look to Tzafon for the guidance. And if it's hidden from us, we don't know. But once it's revealed to us, you can't not see it. When someone points out to you the Big Dipper in the night sky,
Oh yeah.
you can't
Right.
not see it. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, don't think of elephants.
That's right. And I've got a herd in my mind now. Big
Nice.
ones, little ones, pink ones, polka dot ones, they're everywhere.
Yes,
So,
sir.
but also to be aware of the fact that the word for compass and the word for conscience are related words. Now,
Nice.
again, we've mentioned Adolf Hitler Yamach Shmo a couple of times. I'm going to mention him one more time because he said in his book that he wrote in prison called Mein Kampf that the Jews brought into the world two evils. One was circumcision, which he regarded as mutilation of the body, and the other was conscience. Isn't that strange?
Wow. He wants to
But
keep that animalistic nature. Wow, that's bizarre.
Well,
I
he
didn't know that.
he was
That's
a very sick person, obviously an extremely sick person, and perpetrated that sickness on so many millions.
Yeah.
And we even, his legacy, God forbid, even lives to this day in some sectors who revere him for his ideas. But without a conscience, we have no compass. Think about that.
Yeah, right.
So the Jewish people are tasked with being this compass that influences the conscience of people around the world. So when we look at these numbers, they're not just stats, they're causes to say, well, can I do anything about this? Because the purpose of the Jewish people in the world is to bring blessing and guidance and modeling of values, goodness, mercy, social justice, not in the reactive kind that we see with certain groups that I won't name that, did billions of dollars worth of damage during the riots of who and when.
Right.
But the Jews are walking around unaware of who they are. We have the problem here in Israel. They say, I'm an Israeli. Yeah, but are you Jewish? I'm an Israeli.
Yeah.
Well, there are lots of Israelis here. We have Israeli Arabs that are here, 2 million of them inside on this side of the Green Line where I am. So it's really critical to engage in the one thing that is the preventative to Jews disappearing. When we say nidmu ami mibli da'at, that passage from the prophet, I think Hosea, the causes Jews to disappear in the ways that we saw in those numbers. And that is knowledge, awareness, consciousness of the conscience.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to mention briefly, I've gotten involved in something that when this lawyer called me from Far Rockaway, my buddy Ronnie, and mentioned a certain philanthropist that he works with and says, Henry wants you to help out. And to help out do what? He says, well, we have this organization called Thrive, interesting name, Thrive Study Abroad. And this is one little slice of a much larger pie that's doing something proactively to tackle the issues that we just talked about. So Thrive has a partnership with the Hebrew University and Tel Aviv University for a study abroad program. Now, study abroad is very common for university students, college students across the landscape. You have mostly junior year students will take a program and they might go to Florence in Italy, they might go to Prague, they might go to Barcelona as a major destination, because I heard you can go to Barcelona, party hardy, study a little bit in the classes, get a 4.0, and go back to where you came from. That's not a bad deal. However, we're active on 54 campuses now with Thrive. We're inviting students to come to Israel, where they can connect with their history and their heritage, where they can study at the Hebrew University and Tel Aviv University, where if you want to go to Barcelona, it's 3 hours away. You want to go to Prague, it's 2 hours away. You want to go to Dubai, it's about an hour and a half away. You can see different parts of the Abrahamic nations that are here to be able to visit. We provide a lot of different enrichment programs, like a weekend IDF boot camp. There's a kibbutz experience. There's a mystical experience in Tzfat. It's not a religious program. It's really an identity program, because Jews come to the land of Israel for the first time. I like to say you haven't experienced Israel properly until you've done your laundry here.
Oh, that's funny. Wow.
Because you could come on birthright and you'll be in a bus, you go around 10 days and you're shepherded here and there and shown this and that, and they feed you. But it's another thing to live here and say, well, what am I going to eat tonight? I don't have cooking facilities. What am I going to do? What are we going to do for the weekend? And a lot of students that come to Hebrew University, which is an amazing program through the Rothberg division there. In fact, by the way, I'll mention this. Rothberg even has a division for non-Jews. So if you are interested, you're a college student, and you want to come to Israel for a semester or longer, they have a whole English track there that you can come and participate in. Come on, get over here.
Wow.
Make it part of your bucket list. You can do that. Get in touch with me. I put the email address right there at the bottom of the screen. But for Jewish students, it's so critical to have them come here for the 22 weeks comprising a semester, so that they can really feel for the first time in their lives, William, they're part of a majority. Because remember, Jews in America don't feel part of that majority. They're like 2% maybe of the population.
Right.
So we have an amazing solution with an amazing partnership to give them a way to start to get beyond surviving, to be out from under the umbrella of BDS, being bombarded by all that going on campuses. By the way, there's this curious movement. I just began to study this recently, this last week. Somebody sent me an article, my buddy Mordecai, about how many Jews are migrating from traditional big name campuses to Christian campuses. Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, not that far from you, has 150 Jews.
Really?
And they're not Messianics.
Is that
right?
That's not Christ for the Nations. That's also in the Fort
Worth. No, that's not Christ for the Nations.
Okay,
that's also in that. Right, I know them.
Okay, cool.
Lindsay's. Okay. This is a regular liberal arts Christian college with a Christian program for those that want it. 150 Jews there. They have a Hillel chapter there. All right. I spoke to the Hillel leader there, Mimi. And I was blown away to find that there's this migration to these smaller colleges where the values are core values that are more, biblically harmonious, and where they're not going to get beat up and browbeaten by these BDS advocates. So, I've given a lot of information out here. I'll just mention one thing. If anybody's watching this and we're near the beginning of September. In fact, tonight is the beginning of the month, the Hebrew month of Elul, which is a very sacred month. We say HaMelech B'Sadeh, the king is in the fields.
Oh, right.
And so this is a time of drawing close. And if you are anywhere connected to a campus, couple things. We want to get the word out about this incredible program that Thrive has. You can get thrivestudyabroad.org, which I'm consulting to right now. It's amazing what we can do for these kids. We want to build up the spring semester, and we have an amazing fellow behind us who's 89 years old, and he's putting a lot of his personal wealth on the line to save the next generation of Jews by giving them the experience of coming to Israel and experiencing what it's like to be a Jew in the land of Israel. So I'm looking actually for some interns, paid interns, to help me get the word out on campuses across the country. So whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, if you resonate with what we're talking about and you want to talk about it with me to see if it's something you could be helpful to, I'd love to hear from you. That'd be great. So I don't want to make this into a commercial, William, but I realized no, but I realized.
No, you're good.
if people want to really do something, get involved and make a difference, I'll get you paid for it. Okay,
that's awesome.
So, nice. and there's some bonuses in it also we've built into it. So we really want to. I'm working with people that are committed to make a difference. You, William, are one of those people, and it's been a thrill and a joy to spend several years working with you, whether it's been Hebrew, whether it's been countering missionary concepts, or here, just talking about a slice of an issue and looking for a solution to that issue, which I think we've touched on a few things today that have been enlightening. I guess I'll ask you, I'll put you on the spot. You're on the hot seat now.
Okay.
What's your takeaway from this time that we've invested together today?
Today, I find it I think it's very important for not just Jews to maintain or to fix, I'll say fix, their autonomy, their ability to stay connected to their roots. But I also think that for the ex-Christian who left and is now a no-hide. No-hide is a loose term, so I know it's not a biblical term, but it is a biblical concept. And I think
Noga-hide.
Noga. So I think that for me this is kind of a little emotional in a way, because I think of it on a more microscopic scale, same exact thing, microscopic in the sense of a family. Now we're talking about a single cell, whatever. I'm not a scientist, but I'm just painting the picture. Not a nation of people, but a family, a single household. And I think about you, dog. I get emotional with this. So I think about my son and my daughter, my sons and daughters, and I think how important it is to me to keep them spiritual. I've already employed every idea that I have to keep that way, as far as raising them properly, and. But I'm thinking 2-3 generations down the road, are my grandkids, are my great grandkids going to be, spiritual people, and it, if I want to preserve that now, to set that ball in motion, I'm going to have to start being very proactive in my choices and not being selfish. Well, I don't want to have to go to Shabbat on Saturday. But what about your kids? If you don't, and then you start being lax on other things, what kind of impact is this going to have on your kids and grandkids? Do you want them to end up being completely atheist or whatever the case may be? I mean, we saw the numbers; those are real numbers, and so, yeah. Without getting too emotional, I will stop there, because I think everybody gets the grasp of what I'm saying here. This is.
I see that this has affected you. Did you expect that when we started?
Nope.
Okay, so I was compelled really to approach you about this situation, because I couldn't think of anybody else on the planet really more qualified with whom to have this conversation than you, because I know a few people who care as much as you do and have invested so much in life and energy and the money you've put out and the equipment you've acquired to help facilitate a message of caring and loving. And you've been able to give a platform to some amazing people across a spectrum. And you've given some unity to these guys that were otherwise sort of just lone voices out there,
Right.
whether it's Rabbi Skobac, Rabbi Singer, Rabbi Federow, and others that down through, whether they've been short-term or longer-term presences with you. And I've been one of those like kind of off and on kind of guys, but I deeply appreciate the power, the potency, the purity. I'm being alliterative here because I'm showing my background as an ex-preacher.
Right.
So I come from the I used to call it the Hayfordian School of Verbosity. For anybody that knew Jack Hayford, who was my
That's funny.
mentor back in the years, who died in January 8th this year.
Okay.
And I'm just appealing to anybody that's watching this right now that if you care about not just the survival, but the thriving of the Jewish people, if you care to try to turn around this nosedive that a significant segment of the Jewish people in the West, particularly America, is experiencing through no real fault of their own, other than just simply they don't know.
Yeah.
And so for one segment, like now we talk about college students, for example, we have a solution that works on its own. I was talking to somebody earlier today. He's one of the most well-known public relations agents in the city of Manhattan, and he gave me almost 75 minutes of his time today to talk about all this. And he said, we were talking about what happens when someone comes to this land. There's a Talmudic expression that says that the air of the land of Israel makes a person wise. Avir Eretz Israel machkim. The air of the land of Israel makes a person wise.
Wow.
I know that being here, I mean, if you compare a video with me today and go back to February or January or something we did, I look a few pounds heavier for sure. I lose weight when I come here. My tinnitus reduces.
You look great. I'm just saying. You look great.
Happier. I mean, listen, it's wonderful to be in the land. I encourage every Jewish person out there watching, if you can make aliyah, come home, get in touch with Nefesh B'Nefesh. If you are a friend of the Jewish people, you have friends in your community, whatever, encourage them. This is the time. This is the time to come home. And I just so appreciate, I want to say to all the Noachites that are watching, how deeply I love and care about you. I know what it's like to come out of the church and to wonder and to wander, to be aimless and confused and uncertain and angry and depressed and not have any direction. But, as Bob Dylan sang many years ago when I was a teenager, and the times they are a changing. All right. So and TaNaCh talk is part of that force for good and what I would call in anthropological terms, we call it a change agent. So that's happening. And so you are in an amazing place in your life, as incomplete as you might feel right now. There are things that you can do. So you're welcome, of course, to correspond with me at gshebrew@gmail.com.
That's awesome.
I'm more than happy to be part of your journey and tell some takes me a little bit to answer. I know, by the way, for those of you that have been writing to Rabbi Singer, for example, he gets probably a couple hundred emails a day and he can't answer all of them. So if you've got a really burning question, you have the TaNaCh Talk question line. So what is that number, by the way, William, if you want to give that out to people?
That TaNaCh Talk hotline is 855-952-4253. And a quick, easy remembrance for that is 855-95-BIBLE. So 855-952-4253. That's it right there. So for those of you who have the old rotary phones.
Okay, and the last thing I want to mention is I generally do when I have the opportunity to have a little FaceTime with William is I want to ask everyone at least once a month to buy William a cup of coffee. In other words, to make a small contribution. And there are enough people now on the platform that are their frequent viewers here that little, $5, $10 if you want to be generous, that makes us a huge difference because there are streaming costs and equipment maintenance and other things like that to do. This is a huge part of William's life. those of us who contribute content do it freely because we care and we care about you. William has to make a life out of this because it takes a lot of time and he does a great job. So I don't want to embarrass him, but I will boldly say that this platform is worthy and deserving of our mutual support. So I give my time and I give what I can. You can just put $5 toward the Patreon, and if 1,000 of you do that, which you can, what a difference that can make for not just for William and his family and for the work they're doing, but across the world as we together, the family of TaNaCh Talk, make a difference. I want a lot of mad people out there. What's MAD stand for? Making a difference.
Making
I
a
want
difference.
mad Jews. I want mad Noachides. I want William to be mad. I want all of us to be mad, okay? Making a difference. Because as Pirkei Avot says, the Ethics of the Fathers says very clearly, I think it's the second chapter, I have to look. It says, Emor ma'at aseh harbe. Say little, do much. So let's put the pedal to the metal, make a difference. I've given you a number of suggestions here in what we talked about today. Go back, watch it again at 1.5, 1.75. Pick out the activity that has your name on it, dive in deep, and let's make a difference together. I love every one of you deeply. So, well, you don't know me. You know what? I don't have to, because Hashem has put a deep love in my heart for each one of you. I know how much I love William and each of the contributors on here on this wonderful platform of TaNaCh Talk. And together, digitally, we've been given the tools. Hashem gave us the digital age to have a reach far beyond whatever we could have done. William, imagine trying to do this 25 years ago.
My
Couldn't
God,
happen.
that would not have happened. No, it would have been so incredibly hard to do for sure.
But look at what we all can do. You
Yes.
leave comments here.
Yeah.
You make suggestions. You call
You
in
get
with
immediate
questions.
answers. We're in the age of microwaves, man.
That's
You
right.
know, where it used to take forever to cook a meal, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, you've got a nice kosher beef hot dog ready to roll. And now
Sounds
you
good to me.
Yep. So just to correct, and I never get to do this, so I'm going to do this now. I never get to correct Gabriel because he's never wrong. But in this case, his humility was the reason why he was wrong. So you said for a few years you've been on TaNaCh Talk for a few years now, and so we've been on this together journey for 7 years now. You and I.
Wow.
I've got on the screen right now. You can actually let me go over here where I can mouse over it. So where's it at here? So our very first Hebrew for Fun and Profit was done 7 years ago.
Wow.
7 years ago we've been doing this show. I don't know
Baruch
why
Hashem,
my mouse
I
isn't
hope
showing up,
you-
but you can see where I'm hovering because it's flickering the screen.
Mhm.
So yeah, Baruch Hashem for that. And also
7 years.
and also we're so far Baruch Hashem have like in the past 6 months we've jumped subscriber rates percentage wise dramatically. Which I'm really grateful for. We're up to it was probably 12,000 subscribers, a year ago, and we've doubled that in 1 year. It's 24,
Wow.
almost 25,000 subscribers. So,
That is
if each of y'all just, I mean, honestly, just gave like $1, and this doesn't happen, but if y'all just donated $1 a month, I could, oh my gosh, we could be doing so much more. Anyway, we could probably open a Noahide Center at that point. Not really, but you get the point. You donate $10. We don't know.
Well,
I'm just
it's
saying.
serious. Listen,
It's very
all of us
serious.
who've come, all of us who've come out of the church were wired to be givers,
Absolutely.
and we come out of the church and we're confused.
We're not just confused. We think that the giving, we find out that the giving was going to the wrong source. We think that it became
that's very well
selfish,
said.
and now nobody
Mhm.
wants to give at all because they feel like it's only to benefit, the preacher, and
Right.
and his brother or sisters, whatever the case may be. And that's really it's really a true thing. But the problem is, giving is one of the key essences of Judaism, and even being a Noahide on teshuvah and on repentance, and there's blood sacrifices ain't it. Got to tell you, sorry, brother, but it spoiled a lot of people. I mean, it spoiled me for a long time. And probably after I left the church, I was like, for 3 or 4 years, I was like, I ain't doing nothing, man. I've wasted so much money giving the preachers just so they can have fancy cars, and that was my attitude. It really was, not realizing.
I've seen your car. It's not fancy.
Yeah,
Your truck.
Hey, it ain't that bad.
We are making this. We're making this recording.
Yeah.
now it's night here where I am in Jerusalem, and it's the first night of the holy month of Elul. So we're 30 days out from Rosh Hashanah.
Hmm.
We've said before, Rosh Hashanah is not just for Jews. We call it the Jewish New Year, but there are 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. The first day of Rosh Hashanah, and that's across the world, whether you're in Israel or outside of Israel. There's some
Okay.
holidays we observe one day here and 2 days out. This one, everybody observes 2 days because the first day is for the Jewish people when Hashem evaluates all the sheep, as it were. And the second day is for the non-Jewish people.
Mm.
So this month of Elul is a month leading up to that. Now we say from the Song of Solomon, there's the phrase Ani ledodi v'lodi li, which are the first letters of each of those words spell out Elul. There are other combinations of words that spell out Elul that have a message embedded. But this is a time when Hashem draws near. And you mentioned tzedakah, which is giving of charity. And we learn and we say during, especially the Yom Kippur davening, that three things: tshuva, turning back; tzedakah, giving charity; utfila, prayer; ma'avirin et hagzera, causes the decree against us basically to be passed over or passed away. So I can suggest to you at the beginning of this month of Elul, when we're making this recording, or at any time you're watching this, even 3-5 years from now, giving some charity to something as simple as TaNaCh talk, and it could be $1, it could be $5. Don't make yourself crazy. But when you do that, when you take something from your own resources and you give it to something that's making a difference, then it causes a cancellation and a sweetening of judgments that might be against us, because we do things that cause opposition from the heavenly court, as it were. And this is for everybody, not just for Jews. So as we're coming up now toward Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, etc., this is a good time to take care of your own, spiritual well-being. And doing that, I know, for example, when I go to the market over here to Machane Yehuda, there are always people sitting around there, charity collectors. Now, whether they're real or not, I don't know. But I know that if I give to them, there's a value that comes to me. I'm not giving just to get, but I find it's like somebody said once about prayer, William. I remember this from years ago. Somebody said, well, tefillah, prayer, it's just a coincidence. And the answer the guy gave was classic. I've never forgotten. He said, well, it's funny you say that, because when I pray, I have a lot of coincidences. And when I don't pray, I don't have a lot of coincidences. So I think I'll keep praying no matter what you say, right?
I just know.
So I think the same thing is true for tzedakah, for giving charity.
I love it.
When I give charity, some interesting things fall out from that.
Yeah.
And when I don't give charity, some things don't fall out from that. So
yep.
I don't want to challenge everybody. I want to invite everybody, okay, just to be part of this wonderful family. And for all of you that watch, God bless you. It's so great to have you. I just, from all the depths of my heart here let me look up here. Wow, it's midnight for me here in Jerusalem, and I got a 7:00 conference call with California.
Wow.
But it's wonderful to be with you.
Thank you.
If there's anything I can do to be helpful, especially in the realm of learning Hebrew, I think that's one of the things I've been tasked to do in this world. And just to, love each other and build up each other. I'm going to shut up now, William, because I could go on and on.
You're good. So
thank you.
You're very welcome. And so, guys, if you are interested in the Hebrew aspect, if you've never seen my friend here, Gabriel Aryeh Sanders, you go to my channel, TaNaCh Talk, and you will just search for this phrase, Hebrew for fun and profit, or Sanders, his last name, Sanders on Psalms, and PSA element. So those two categories will both get you to every teaching that we have with this young man. If you want to learn some super elementary Hebrew, I've even got my own little series on there where I'm teaching elementary Hebrew, and I think it's called the Hebrew for Beginners or something like that. So feel free to check that out. So again,
with your permission,
yes, sir.
With your permission, William, I'll just give a heads up of what's coming in the category we call Sanders on Psalms.
Oh, good.
The next psalm we're going to focus on, and I've been working quite a bit on I'm actually working 13, 14-hour days in this consulting work I'm doing with Thrive Study Abroad. But that's going to pass as far as the intensity. So the next psalm we're going to focus on is 100.
Oh, nice.
And it's a beautiful psalm. It's got some wonderful concepts in it and 7 very interesting verbs.
Okay.
And then we're going to tackle the mother of all psalms, which is 119.
Yeah.
There's 176 verses to it. So there's 22 stanzas of 8
That
verses
might
each.
take us about 12 months to get through.
Might, if we, yeah, could.
If you really chop that thing
maybe
up.
more.
Yeah.
but I have some wonderful
Yeah,
resources that don't appear in English. I'm digging them out from the Hebrew,
Nice.
which is appropriate, from Rabbi Rav Kook. And I think people are going to really enjoy it. So this is where I'm giving you Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, the way that I learned biblical Hebrew, which was sitting with Dr. Paul Gabeline, blessed memory, from Fuller Seminary, where I took some advanced Hebrew work many, many years ago in the other part of my life. And we would just sit, I'd go to his condo in Santa Monica by the beach, and we would just sit, him, me, and the text, and read.
Wow.
And he would point things out as we went through inductively. And that's kind of what we're doing here. It's a little bit more organized than that. But I think you'll find it, if you're interested in biblical Hebrew, and you're able to read, at least to read, and you know some basic vocabulary.
Nice.
If you don't, I have a lot of resources I can recommend to you. So you're welcome to write me at gshebrew@gmail, and I'll happily pass those along to you. Or if you want notes from previous sessions, if you watch those, I think we're coming up on number 7 now. Just write. I'll whatever.
Yeah.
We'll get you what you need.
Very
William,
good.
you're the best. Thank you.
I appreciate that, but I think you're the best, so we can take that to our graves, arguing on that point later on. So, oh man, well, what a great day. So, Gabriel, I really appreciate you, brother. You've got a great heart for the Jewish people, a great heart for teaching people proper understanding of the most sacred text that's ever been written, and
Amen.
I appreciate it.
I love you too, man. Thank you so much.
You bet. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you again soon. Peace, everybody. Shalom.
Shalom, my dear friends. Hope this message finds you well. If you like the way this channel is going, and the channel has been a blessing to you, please consider supporting the channel by going to the website, TaNaChTalk.com, TANACHTALK.com. Thank you once again for your time and for supporting TaNaCh Talk. Shalom.
תמיד כולם ביחד, חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה